now, and the team will pick them up. They may answer you directly there, or we can pose the questions to the speakers later. There's also going to be an additional 30 minutes if anybody wants to stay on the call. So the event will end in an hour, but there'll be an additional 30 minutes if you want to just have a more casual check-in with the team and ask us anything else that you'd like to know. Okay, but before we dive in, I just wanted to say thanks again to all of the campaigners, scientists, backers, partners, funders, supporting MPs and peers, because what a year 2025 has been already. Thanks to all of our dedicated hours of campaigning, we were able to make the biggest moment for climate and nature in Parliament so far in this session. And that was not our words, it's been other people's words. But the Climate and Nature Bill had its second reading, which is its crucial next step on the path to becoming law on the 24th of January. But despite all of this momentum, there was a huge pushback from the government whips, which has put the bill on pause. It's been scheduled for the debate to continue on the 11th of July, and we'll definitely be making the best moment and the best of this moment. We know it won't actually get parliamentary time that it needs to progress without the government intervening and calling for it to be prioritised with a debate and a vote. So this is exactly what we're going to be pushing and calling for. As we'll hear from George and Domi, we're in an incredibly challenging political time with the rise of net zero denialism in political discourse, the rise of the far right, and a government who, rather than stepping up, are actually pulling back from action on climate and nature. So this raises the question for all of us, what do we do? But actually, this means that all of our work is even more needed and even more important than ever. In Parliament, we're building our plans to activate our huge group of over 200 MPs and peers who support the bill and the campaign. But it is crucial that this government knows that they can't dismiss us, the public, as eco-zealots. They can't diminish our work and belittle nature as just newts and bats. And we know they're never just newts and bats. We're people from all different walks of life. We're from every constituency in the UK as part of this campaign. We're voters who know that to secure our futures and to make our everyday lives better and fairer, the sensible and essential thing to do is to urgently act on the climate and nature crisis. With our Real Change campaign, we're directly calling on the Prime Minister to give the Climate and Nature Bill time this session and to be debated and voted on. If we want this government to act, we need to demonstrate that voters all over the UK are demanding real change. But I'm going to pause there for now, and I want to pass on to our first speaker, which is Dr. George McGavin. George is an entomologist. He's an author, broadcaster, and explorer known for making science accessible to the public. He held academic roles at the University of Oxford and worked as an assistant curator in entomology at the Oxford University Museum of Natural History. He's best known for presenting wildlife documentaries such as Afterlife, The Strange Science of Decay, and has several insects named after him, which some of you may want to ask about. He's also an incredible ambassador for Zero Hour. So thank you for joining us, George, and over to you.
Thanks very much. In September last year, I joined 1,500 scientists, Nobel laureates and fellows of the Royal Society among them, to get across an important message to MPs. And that was how acutely aware we all are of the threat that humanity faces from climate change and the loss of nature. We were there asking MPs to follow the science and back the climate bill. Well, it's now only too clear that the existential crisis we're facing is bigger and happening faster than any of us could have imagined. The world is daily experiencing the impact of climate breakdown and the loss of nature. The UK, like most other countries worldwide, has seen a significant loss of its plants, animals, and fungi. As a result of habitat loss, intensive agriculture, development, and persecution, the UK is one of the most nature-depleted countries on earth. It seems almost shocking. It was shocking. This was highlighted back in 2021, and there has been very little or no change since. The clear signs of human-induced climate change reached new heights last year, which was likely the first calendar year to be more than 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial era, with a global mean surface temperature of 1.55 above the 1850 to 1900 average. I recorded myself 39.9 degrees C in my garden in Berkshire. I was absolutely gobsmacked. The World Meteorological Organization's State of the Climate 2024 update once again has issued a red alert at the sheer pace of climate change within a single generation, turbocharged as ever by the increasing greenhouse gas levels in the atmosphere. 2015 to 2025 will be the warmest 10 years on record. The loss of ice from last year's sea level rise, ocean heating are accelerating, and extreme weather events are wreaking havoc on communities and economies across the world. Yes, we knew about the problems long ago, and yes, we should have done a lot more and a lot sooner. But of course, vested interests and blind ignorance sought to slow down and stall any real action. But despite this, don't forget, the UK has reduced its emissions by just over 50% in the last 30 years, an achievement which is matched by few other countries. But it proves what can be done when there's a will and when science and policy align. But we need to go further. The UK's goal of reducing emissions by just over 80% by 2035 is not only achievable, it is now vital. Now, I want to just take you back a little bit. Under the previous government, the Dasgupta review of 2021 laid out in the clearest terms possible what the problem was. Nature and biodiversity that underpins it sustains our economies, our livelihoods, and our well-being. That is an undeniable fact. The report shows that we have collectively failed to engage with nature in a sustainable way to the extent that our demands far exceed its capacity to supply us with the goods and services we rely on. He goes on further that our unsustainable engagement with nature is endangering the prosperity of current and future generations. Now, here is the real highlight of his one-page edited highlights. The report is 600 pages long. There's a 100-page summary, but the headlines fit on a one page of A4. And the most important one, as far as I'm concerned, is he states at the heart of the problem lies deep-rooted, widespread institutional failure. That is the reason why we're here. And the solution, he says, begins with an understanding and an acceptance of a simple truth that our economies are embedded within nature, not external to it. In effect, he's saying we are a part of nature, but we've been behaving as if we're apart from nature. We need to change how we think, act, and measure success. We need to follow a more sustainable path. But he also points out that we need to transform our institutions, in particular our finance and education, to enable these changes to happen and sustain them for the future. Well, I went to the Labour Party conference with 0 Hour in 2023 before the election of our current government. We heard ministers pledge to act to restore nature by 2030 and to work to deal with climate change and the breakdown of nature. Yet the government elected less than a year ago on a wave of hope and a hunger for change, is now using very odd language. We are builders, not blockers. And they're pushing forward a planning and infrastructure bill that has been described by some as a license to kill nature. Its supporters describe it as a win-win. A win for people, a win for nature. I'm not so sure it is. They point out quite rightly that we need more housing, energy and transport links and more nature. And they say that the bill will deliver all those and faster than we do now. Again, I don't think it will. They say that the bill does not repeal habitat or species protections or give people a right to do harm. Rather, it creates an alternative mechanism for conservation measures to be agreed and funded more quickly and strategically than we do now. But, why then do NGOs, ecologists, economists, scientists, and legal professionals, why are they lining up to attack it? Among them is Professor Sir Partha Dasgupta himself, who wrote the Dasgupta Review 5 years ago. The government has U-turned on its green pledges and even suggested that it will support runway expansion at Heathrow and other airports and potentially pursue the Rosebank oil field. Worst of all, as Amy said earlier, they whipped against the can bill and put this vital bit of legislation on hold. Well, let us not forget, and they should not forget, that there is widespread public concern about climate change and the decline of nature. It is still the #1 concern. This has not changed. What has changed and what is wavering is the strength of the political vision and will to do what needs to be done. This is not the time to undo the environmental protections that have been put in place, hard won, I might say, but we find ourselves having to refight the fights we've already won. I hope they don't forget the power of the can bill debate on the 24th of January this year, how good it was to hear MPs finally treating this issue with the seriousness it deserves in Parliament. We need the Climate and Nature Bill to be absolutely central to our government's agenda. But I ask you, is this the change we voted for? No, it's not. And what we do now is critically important. This is not the time to diminish our ambition. It's the time to ramp up our efforts, to fight harder than we have ever fought before. We cannot ever give up this fight. That's why we're asking you to help us as we put maximum pressure on the Prime Minister through our new Real Change campaign. We need real change, and we need it now. Amy.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, George. A brilliant rallying cry. We really appreciate that. And now we're going to hear from our next speaker, Dominique Palmer, who is a UK-based climate justice advocate. She's a climate communicator and writer who in 2019 organised the Youth Climate Strikes and is a lead coordinator for Climate Live, which is a global youth-led initiative using music to engage and empower young people in climate action. A passionate advocate for intersectional climate action, Dominique has spoken at COP26 and the UN. She also campaigns with the Youth Climate Justice Fund and the Stop Rosebank initiative. I'm sure many of you know her already, and she's also a fantastic ambassador for 0 Hour. So over to you, Dommy.
Thank you for that introduction, Amy, and thank you, George, for that brilliant speech and contribution to this event. Hi, everyone. It is so great to be here with all of you today. Thank you all so much to be here, and to every single person who has supported this campaign. I am so happy to be an ambassador for this, as we need the Climate Nature Bill now more than ever, and we cannot give up hope. So this government must not be blindsided by the climate deniers and corporate vested interests. Local elections show that the rise of reform is a real threat. People feel disenfranchised, forgotten about, ignored in favor of corporations and the 1%. And right-wing populists are using this disillusionment to sow fear and misinformation about climate and nature action, all while being funded themselves by fossil fuel lobbyists. So these right-wing populists and fossil fuel lobbyists are willing to risk our futures for a quick profit today while sacrificing the vulnerable communities they claim to care about. We know that ordinary people want to see climate and nature action. New research has shown that 89% of people across the world want their national governments to do more in the fight against the climate and nature crisis. So taking science-led action on climate and nature will benefit local people across the UK, and it would mean healthier, happier, and more prosperous lives for all of us. So the real change that we want to see is, firstly, warmer and better insulated homes, lower energy bills and reducing the cost of living crisis, cleaner air and rivers, better and greener public transport and active travel links, secure, well-paid jobs in the industries of the future, better food security to support British farmers, and the list goes on and on. And these are all benefits to our ecosystems and communities across the UK and the world. And it has massive benefits to our quality of life as well. So the importance of organising at a local level, from cities to towns to the countryside, our communities are already being hit by the impacts of the climate and nature crisis. For example, we have seen wildfires that have recently destroyed 500 hectares of Dartmoor National Park, and fires in the UK are up 1,200%. Huge damage to nature, including species already at risk. And earlier this year, we saw extreme flooding across the UK with danger to life warnings issued. Behind every headline is a human cost, aka homes and businesses wrecked and people's livelihoods ruined. The danger to UK citizens is accelerating, yet our government is asleep at the wheel. Just recently, the Climate Change Committee warned that the UK is not prepared for the extreme weather coming our way. They stated, there has been no change in addressing this risk with the change in government. So the new government that was elected with a mandate of change has failed to make any change at all when it comes to keeping you and me and our families and our communities safe from harm and safe from climate impacts. It's clear that letting the far right lead government further to the right isn't going to help us deal with the existential risk we face. We need to explain to people how climate and nature action will benefit them in their everyday lives by reducing the cost of living crisis and making public transport cheaper and more accessible, and delivering jobs for the 21st century, delivering green jobs. The UK's green economy is booming 3 times faster than the main economy, and huge opportunities are here for ordinary people. But the government isn't taking action fast enough, and the benefits aren't reaching the people who need them most. We need to be the one calling them out. We need to be the ones advocating for change, and not just any kind of change, but real change that tackles the climate and nature crisis while delivering the benefits for ordinary people. 6 years ago, Parliament declared a climate emergency, and this came after pressure and action from the climate movement. And I remember that day so clearly. Yet our representatives still aren't acting like it is an emergency at all. And that is why the Climate and Nature Bill is so important. It's the only legislation that calls on the government to follow the science, and the window for it to do this is rapidly closing. So to fight for change, we are mobilising in every constituency in the UK. But in order to do that, we need everyone's help. We need your help, and your support really matters to us. So we're asking you to come on this journey with us. And if you would like to support us to make the biggest impact possible, please do donate to our crowdfunder, which has just gone live today, and the link will be in the chat. Every single penny you donate will help us pressure the government to deliver world-leading science-backed legislation. Thank you. And I will pass it back to Amy.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Dommy, and thanks for that shout out. The link is indeed in the chat, as well as links to our website if you want to get a sneak preview before in the next few seconds before Jamie shows you himself of the Real Change campaign. Do keep your questions coming. I'm sure you have lots of things to ask George, Dommy, hopefully myself, and Jamie as well, or other members of the team. So do keep sharing away in the chat. But now I'm going to pass over, and I think you might need to do a bit of wizardry here, Alan, to make him come on screen, to 0 Hour's own Jamie Russell, our grassroots manager, who will tell you more about the campaign.
Fantastic.
Hey, it worked, Jamie. Here you
That
are.
was brilliant. Fantastic magic behind the scenes going on. Nothing to do with me. Thank you, Amy, and thank you to George and Dominique for really inspiring and rousing speeches there to make us realise just how important this moment really is. Before I talk a little bit more about the campaign, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of you on this call and all of you who are watching, maybe later on catch up or elsewhere on YouTube, to say a really big thank you because, well, basically back in January, we took the CAN bill into Parliament and witnessed what was the most powerful and wide-ranging debate on climate and nature crisis that the UK Parliament has ever seen. There's never been anything like it. And we were able to do this because of the incredible work that campaigners like yourselves have done up and down the UK to get the CAN bill on the agenda. We really, honestly, couldn't have done it without your help. I always say that grassroots is at the beating heart of the CAN bill campaign, and I would say that because I'm the grassroots manager, so you know that's kind of my area. But it really is true. We are a people-powered movement, and the people who power us are you, each and every one of you. Our parliamentary team, big shout out to all of them, including Felix, who's somewhere on this call, you know, do amazing work lobbying and connecting with MPs, but they're only able to do this because of the pressure that campaigners like you bring to bear in your constituencies, and that pressure cannot be underestimated. So ahead of the CAN bill campaign, you did something really amazing. And, you know, it's easy for me to say that, but the numbers actually speak for themselves. So we saw an engagement with MPs on record levels. So in January alone, 30,000 people emailed their MP about the climate and nature bill to ask them to get behind it. Hundreds of you had meetings with your MP, either in person or on Zoom, really making those personal connections and explaining to them why climate and nature action really mattered to you. And we saw street stalls and banner drops and constituency action, all kind of imaginative things happening in constituencies across the UK. And that helped get us local media attention. And as a result, when it came around to the debate, we got national media attention on this issue as well. And that was all thanks to you. So thank you, each and every one of you. But, and it's at this point I take a big deep breath, we all know that the debate on the 24th of January did not end in the way that we all really hoped that it would. This urgent bill, and you've heard from George and Dominique how urgent it is, hasn't been made into law, and there's no guarantee that it will be debated when it goes into Parliament on the 11th of July, not unless the government uses its power to prioritise it. So how exactly do we make them do that? Quite simply, we increase the pressure at a constituency level, building an even bigger mandate than we had going into January. But this time, we're focusing that pressure not on individual MPs, but directly on to number 10 and the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. We have set up open letters in every constituency in the UK, all 650 of them, calling on Sir Keir to give the CAN bill the time it needs in Parliament. Now, in order for this pressure to work, we need every open letter in every constituency to have as many signatures on it as possible to show that there is a mandate for real change. And we're asking individuals to sign and to share it widely in their networks, but we're also asking organisations to sign it too, because we know that that constituency-based pressure shows politicians what it is exactly that the people want. So We're asking you to reach out to the people you know in your networks. We're asking you to reach out to the organisations in your constituencies that you might be part of or involved with or have connections to. And I'm talking about everything from sports clubs to coffee shops to nature charities, your local WI, your local bookshop, because all of us are at risk if the government does not step up and deliver the change that we know we need to see. So what we're asking you to do is very simple. Sign and share the open letter in your constituency to the PM. Share it in your network to get the signatures up on it so that we can really show that there is a groundswell of demand for change. Reach out to those local organisations in your constituency, ask them to sign up too, and do outreach in your community. I know so many of you are so wonderful about this. You're going out in their street stalls, going to meetings, taking leaflets with you. We have a bunch of new lovely 0 hour leaflets, which I'll share with you in a moment, specifically for this campaign, and raising awareness about the importance of change within your constituencies. You can invite us here at 0 Hour to come to your community events. We're always willing to come and talk at meetings, organisation meetings, about the CAN bill and why we need it so desperately. And you can also book our travelling Letters from the Global South exhibition, which does an incredible job of showcasing the vulnerability of people living on the front lines of the climate and nature crisis around the world and why action matters. And finally, we're asking you to email your MP. Now, I know a lot of you have done that as we've seen already. This time it's slightly different. We're asking you to email your MP and ask them to join the coalition that's growing in Parliament of politicians calling for the bill to be given emergency debate time. So it's something really useful that you can also help us with. So at this point, I'm just going to share my screen and I'm going to show you our new revamped website. Just give me a second. Here we go. So hopefully you can all see that. So this is the new revamped 0 Hour website. Big shout out to Dougie, our digital lead, for doing this. As before, it takes you to a specific constituency action page. I'm going to put my postcode in here and you should be able to hopefully see it. This is, I live in Shrewsbury in Shropshire. This is the constituency page. So each of the 650 constituencies in the UK has a specific page just like this that's tailored to you. And we have here the letter to Keir Starmer. I won't go through it all, but it's essentially exactly what we've been talking about this evening: the need for real change, why it matters, how it will benefit people in your constituency, and why it is so urgently, desperately needed. Pushing the Prime Minister to give the bill the time it needs in Parliament. So you can sign up to the open letter here, obviously, as usual, putting in your all your details. And when you sign, it will then send you an automated email with options for sharing on WhatsApp and other social shares. And that really is the key to helping us build those numbers across this campaign. We would like to see thousands more people joining this campaign, calling on the Prime Minister that the time is now to act. And that really is the way that we get results, is through that grassroots constituency-based pressure. Now, the website has also been updated. We've got some really fancy, nice new tools on here. If you go up to the Take Action box up here at the top, you can see you can sign the open letter. There's the option to write to your MP, calling on them to join the call for giving the bill time in Parliament. There's some social shares there. It says tweet your MP, but we all know that not many people like Twitter anymore. So there's options there for blue sky. I don't know what the verb for blue skying your MP is, but it's certainly there. We're encouraging you still to keep meeting your MP. Those personal connections really matter. So doing that really helps us. We've also, I mentioned to you about ordering materials. So we've got some really lovely new real change leaflets, which really lead with the benefits that constituencies will see when they, if the government were to enhance it, bring this bill, progress it forward, and really bring those benefits that Dominique was talking about that we desperately need to see. Dominique mentioned the crowdfunder, which is here. Sorry, I'll just click on the crowdfunder here. So you can see the crowdfunder there is already live and going. George's wonderful face there. Thank you, George. And then on the last one, we have a very fancy new interactive map, which I will leave for those of you who like this kind of thing to play with. But it really does. You can zoom into the UK. You can see which constituencies are already Cambill supporting. Find me. There's me here in Shrewsbury, my Labour MP, and you can take a list of actions there on the side to get in touch with your MP and really pile that pressure on. Just let me stop sharing this screen. There we go.
Wow.
So a lot there on the new website, so I'll leave that to you to dig into. But I just want to point out, what we're asking you to do this time around is not to go out and talk to people about climate and nature per se. I mean, I know lots of you have done that before over the last year, going out into your communities and talking about the urgency of the crisis. This time around, we're really talking, as the campaign name says, about change, about the real change that we were promised in the election and that we need to see. And it's the real change that, as Dominique said, comes from taking action in line with the science on the climate and nature crisis. So all those wonderful benefits that constituencies will receive, like warmer homes, like better public transport, like cleaner air and cleaner river, these are things that are waiting for us to grasp. We just need our politicians to step up and actually do it for us. And not only that, these are the benefits that will counter the narrative of hate and division and decline that we are hearing from the far right. Because tackling the climate and nature crisis is the biggest opportunity of the 21st century. It is the way to create a better, fairer, greener, even happier Britain for everyone. Now, by taking action in your constituency, you won't be acting alone. The power of this is all 650 constituencies across the UK acting together. In July, we will be delivering all of those 650 letters to Parliament in order to show the PM just how much support there is for action. And we believe that this is actually going to be quite historic, because we believe this will be the first time any Prime Minister will ever receive a letter on an issue from every single constituency across the UK, which will be a huge achievement if we can pull this off, and a sign of the enormous mandate that the Cambill has in the UK. So on 9th of July, which is how this campaign is running up to, you can join us in Westminster as we deliver these letters to number 10. Or if you like, if it's difficult for you to get to London, you can arrange to meet your MP in your constituency, hand in the letter to them and ask them to support it in Parliament, support their constituents calling for time for the Cambill. And our aim in all of this is to prove to Keir Starmer that all 650 constituencies in the UK want the same thing. They support the real change that will come from taking action. So I do hope you can join us as we hold the government to account and we make the Prime Minister deliver the urgent science-led legislation that we all want to see. Thank you. Over to you, Amy.
Absolutely brilliant, Jamie. Such rousing speeches. No, that's really, really fantastic and so good to be walked through the campaign like that. Massive shout out to Dougie Hunt, who does all of our website and digital work. He's really been powering through to get all of this ready for all of us today. And that map in particular looks really, really fantastic. So do go and explore your constituency page, see what you can find. Do comment, let us know what you think. We'd really appreciate your thoughts. So great. Thanks again, Jamie. We're a little bit ahead of time, which is miraculous for events like these. So well done, everyone. But we do have about 20 minutes, maybe a little bit more for questions. And I believe that Jamie is going to come back and pull some of them out of the hat.
Yes, kindly had some questions in the chat. So I'm just going to pick out one. This is for all three of you. Let's see here. This is from Stephanie. How can we best convince MPs on the economic benefits of investing in Cambill policies, especially for nature, beyond the principles just outlined? My relatively supportive new Labour MP quizzed me on this last September and didn't seem totally convinced on the info. So I think Stephanie's really looking for what is the best way to convince MPs that there is an economic benefit to taking this kind of action.
What's the benefits? Well, the cost of not doing anything is colossal. I mean, I can't begin to explain. It almost seems to me that people are sticking their head in the sand. They're going la 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 la. We're just going business as usual. Things will be fine. If MPs, their job is to respond to their constituents. Lots of people say to me, "Oh, I'm just one person. What can I do?" Well, Jamie has shown you what to do, exactly what to do. So, what can I do? Said the 30 million people. You know, this is how it works. You know, they can't ignore us. They might hope that we're going to go away. They might hope that we're going to roll over and accept some of the rather strange things they've said. If I can just remind you about the this new plan that they have. Under the new model, developers will contribute to a nature restoration fund, which will invest in the protection and recovery of habitats that are impacted. Well, how's that going to work? You know, natural England has to ensure there's a net benefit to nature, and plans require ecological surveys, blah, blah, blah. I'm not at all convinced any of this will actually happen. You know, they need to listen to the science. You know, what is the point in having some of the best scientists on the planet if you don't listen to them? Look what happened to Michael Gove, who said, "We've had enough of experts." Yes, Michael, I don't think we have had enough of experts. That's exactly what we need now. And we need people, everybody in the UK who is concerned about this, 89%, and probably more, to get involved. We can make this happen.
I think that's excellent. Thank you, George. Domi, do you want to jump in on that?
Yes, I definitely agree. I think one thing that I have been kind of saying to different MPs has also been the first point that George mentioned, which is that the cost of inaction is so much higher, and dealing with climate impacts after they happen is going to be the most costly thing we could ever face. And I think starting with that, and then also talking, there's actually a source that I put in the chat as well that 0 Hour shared with me, that everyone from the team's kind of shared, about how the net zero sector is growing 3 times faster than the overall green economy. So the UK's green economy is already booming. And one thing I've also been talking about with MPs, apart from, like, you know, supplying the facts and figures, is kind of, if you think about it, just on like a basic, if they think about it on a basic level of what opportunities there could be, it's like tremendous. Like, it's not just energy, it's also, you know, community-led action, it's transport, it's education. There's, you know, there's just so, yeah, transport, education, food, there's so much involved in a green transition that if we are to have the climate action, we need to, you know, change everything we're doing. We need to change the economy. So therefore, there are so many different sectors that will have to be part of that transition. So I think maybe, yeah, really emphasizing that is something that I found personally helpful.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Dominique. A lot to think about there, I think, from both of you. Next question, Amy, this might be one for you, I think. This is from Sarah, who's asking, what are you doing to engage all the other environmental groups and charities? We would be much stronger if we all act together and combine forces. The membership of all these groups is really big. We are more powerful together. I think we would all agree on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just before I do answer that, I was just thinking, reflecting as George and Domi were speaking, you know, actually Ed Miliband himself said that it's now cheaper to do the right thing than it is to do the wrong thing. So I think it's really important to remember this. We can actually use, we all know that this is the case, and we will be writing to you and helping you to create these economic arguments, because by not acting, it threatens our economy, our own purses, our well-being, our lives through things like food insecurity, energy insecurity, and the breakdown of nature. And the government has been spending a vast amount of money on subsidies for unproven technologies, when we know that, you know, it's an interconnected crisis, and it's a lot cheaper actually to use nature based solutions. And I'm sure one of the team will pop into the chat this lovely report that we can still refer to, called Creating a Nature Rich UK, that Zero Hour has produced. So there's more information there as well. But yeah, to your question, thanks, Jamie. We really want to collaborate with all of our partners. So we're really pleased at Zero Hour that we have so many different backers and supporters, including over 1,000 different organisations. These are NGOs, they're businesses, they're local community groups. We'll be reaching out to all of them to also sign up to these 650 momentous open letters that we'll be handing in to the Prime Minister. So if you are a member of an organisation, you'd like to help get involved, then do get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll be reaching out to you as well. But we want as many organisations as possible to sign up to the open letter, to share them, to reach out. We'll also, of course, be involved in the Climate Coalition's mass mobilisation that will be taking part on the 9th of July, which will be just ahead of the second reading. So as Jamie was starting to outline, we will be using that sort of build up and celebrating all of our support and our progress on the 11th of July as well. But yeah, reach out. We want to work together. We'll be collaborating and supporting with others as well. And we'd love to see the build on our open letters.
It's a good point. I mean, if you add up all the people who currently belong to organizations like the Wildlife Trust, the RSPB, Bug Life, Plant Life, Bird Life, it far exceeds the numbers of people who are members of political parties. But here is one thing, here is one issue, one critical issue that we can come together on. And that's why we need grassroots action.
Yes, completely. And, I echo that. As the grassroots manager, I echo that completely, George. Thank you.
Of course you do.
Here we have a question. I would like to know the answer to this question, actually. This is from Sophie, who says, how important is social media, podcasts, and other modern media in getting cut through with the benefits of climate nature action? Dominique, am I right in saying that you have a social media presence and maybe the person to ask this one too?
Yeah, so I do use social media as a tool to try and communicate the climate crisis and what's going on and different campaigns to support. It is definitely a useful tool, I would say, especially in the kind of changing social climate that we're in. A lot of people, unfortunately, are getting, a lot of this kind of distracting climate misinformation and news from these big podcasters or, misinformation online on social media. And so I do feel like we need a force to kind of counter that. At the same time, I think while it is a tool, it's not the kind of be all and end oil. End oil? Well, we do need to end oil.
End oil.
End oil. There have been like the movement we have built is really based off of in-person connections and having a real sense of community that you can't just get online. But it's definitely, a really important part of it. And I don't think we should underestimate just how much we can kind of break out of the algorithms and the echo chamber to try and reach these other people.
Very much so. George and Amy, I don't know if you want to jump in on social media.
Communication is important. I mean, I used to have an X account, but I backed up last year. It was just too awful. I'm now on Blue Sky. But education is key, and I spend a lot of time going to schools, primary schools and secondary schools, and I talk about the environment, I talk about ecology, I talk about the massive change, which of course they're not aware of, because change happens and has been happening for 50, 60, 70 years relatively gradually. So it's this shifting baseline syndrome. So one year is this much stuff, and then the next year it gets slightly less, and the next year slightly less, and it happens incrementally. And then you're 20 years down the line, 30 years, and then you think back to what it was like before, and you think, hang on, There's been a massive change, and there has been a massive change. I mean, as an as an entomologist myself, and anybody who is my age, or even a bit not as old as me, will remember that there were so many more flying insects around than there are today. There are basically very few flying insects, and I'm down here in a beautiful part of the world for a few days holiday, and actually there are very many. There are much less insects here than I've ever seen before. Insects are critical. They're the lifeblood of ecology, if you like. You know, things are changing. They are changing relatively rapidly, but it's not immediately apparent. But if anybody doesn't believe me, ask your parents, your grandparents, and they'll tell you that they'll paint a very different picture. I've spent now the whole of my adult life looking at the slow demise of the natural world in the UK. I often wonder why I picked it as a degree course. I should have picked anthropology or astronomy, perhaps, because the stuff I found interesting would still be there. The pot shards would still exist. The stars would still exist. Unfortunately, I picked the natural world, the stuff on which we depend, as my subject of interest, and it's been a little depressing, to say the least.
Yeah, no, that really is, George. And I've been reading reports recently about scientists doing studies of number plates to see how many bugs
Oh
were
yeah,
on them and everything else. It's really is very scary. And I should say, you mentioned leaving Twitter. There's always an opportunity for us to explain. We have shifted as much as we can over to Blue Sky, but we're still waiting for MPs to follow us. So a lot of MPs still stay on Twitter, which is why sometimes you might see us talking about
yeah.
tweeting your MP, and it's very much because we have to go where they are. So, just a reminder to come in is, if you do talk to your MP, ask them, why are you still on X stroke Twitter? And maybe encourage them to come to Blue Sky, because it is much nicer there. It really is.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
The
So
bluer sky. I was going to actually pass the question back on to you, Jamie, a little bit in terms of, because obviously social media is incredibly powerful and important. We found throughout this campaign that all of this stuff, all of this movement making, mass mobilization is obviously incredibly relational. And I wondered if you could also say a bit about the importance of meeting in person, meeting in your constituency, going to talk to your MP, whether that is on a Zoom call like this or whether you can make it in person as well.
yeah, for sure. I mean, some of the great successes we've seen over the course of this campaign in terms of local action are fellow constituents coming together and really coming up with a plan for what they want to do in their constituency. And that could be something really informal, just a couple of people. Sometimes they're then bringing in groups, the local Friends of the Earth group or whatever other group it might be, and building those connections and building those networks, because every constituency has those networks. And doing, as you say, sometimes the social media is part of it, WhatsApp groups, all of these things, but it only can bolster those real life connections. And when people have a connection to a community and a place and a locale, and they're seeing the climate and nature impacts that are happening there for them, like me here in Shrewsbury, we have the River Severn running straight through the heart of the town. So we're suffering twice over, because we're seeing floods off a scale that we've never seen before, on now once in 100-year floods happening much more often than that. And we're also seeing river pollution, and these are really galvanizing issues for people because they see them in their local community, and it has actually built up those networks of people who are keen to push for greater climate and nature action. And we have quite a thriving climate and nature bill group here in Shrewsbury, of people who have really taken action and pressured our MP. And that then builds, I think, from constituents, people meeting up one-to-one and in groups to push for action, to then meeting with their MPs. And we've seen that happen as well. We've seen people go in groups to speak to their MP in person and really explain to them why this matters to them, and bringing it back always. And I think that's the real key to what we're doing now, is bringing it back always to the benefits that exist for those communities in taking action. So it's not just in somewhere like my constituency about reducing flood risk, it's actually about bringing benefits that will help everyone in the constituency in terms of lowering bills, tackling the cost of living, warmer houses, cleaner air, cleaner river. These are things that nobody is going to argue against. Nobody's going to say, I don't want my house to be warm. I don't want my energy bills to be cheaper. I don't want my air and water to be cleaner. Nobody is going to argue against these things. And I think that's the way to show MPs why it's so important that they take action, because sometimes we talk about the targets and the figures and the global average temperatures and everything else, and I think sometimes some MPs maybe just tune out slightly. But when you talk about the benefits that can be brought to constituents and communities by them taking action, then I think they sit up and listen, because every MP secretly just wants to be re-elected, and what's the best way to do that? Make sure that your constituents are happy with you, I think. So yeah, very much so.
Rivers, as you said, are an immensely big issue. I mean, what percentage of the UK's rivers are in reasonable or good ecological health? It's about 14%. That is appalling.
And the scale of change there as well, it will be probably not in my lifetime that I get to see clean rivers ever again, because it's going to take so long to fix all of this, unless the government pulls out all the stops and really tackles it. So hopefully that's what they'll do. I'm going to segue slightly into something different here. We've had a couple of questions actually about citizens' assemblies, and I think maybe this might be an interesting one. So questions about, was there pushback from politicians against the bill because of its use of citizens' assemblies? Was it something that politicians were balking at, the idea of using a non-elected body to do, I guess, what they probably thought was their job to do in terms of making decisions? And is that an issue for the bill? And Amy, I know that you know everything there is to know about citizens' assemblies, so I'll go straight to you on that one.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, it's a really critical part of the bill, and I know it's something that a lot of us here on this call will be very passionate about as well. And it's a really important way to actually hold politicians to account, but also, as with this real change campaign and the whole point and everything that we're saying here tonight, it's really important to understand the impact that climate change and the breakdown of nature has on people's everyday lives, and bringing that everyday experience into the conversation, and making sure that we find a fair way forward that will benefit everyone is absolutely essential. And we must not forget that with all this parliamentary work that we're doing. Yes, whoever wrote that question, it is often a problem with MPs. There are a growing group that do really understand the benefits of citizens' assemblies, and obviously there are some really clear examples that we can signpost them to, whether it was the huge Six Select Committee Citizens' Assembly that took place back in, I think it was 2019, Climate Assembly UK, or the more recent People's Plan for Nature, as well as all the numerous citizens' assemblies that have been happening across the UK, locally as well. So, and internationally. I mean, there are some really brilliant resources out there as well that I'm sure we can post in the chat too. So do check out about more information. But this is the case that we will be making and are making to MPs. But there is amongst a very big group a sensation that they are the Citizens' Assembly, that they are the people representative of the UK that have been voted there, which they have. But as we all know, it's really, really important to have the public's voice heard to make the change that we need to see as well. So as far as the pushback though that we had from government, that was part of the pushback. I think also it was a matter of timing with the Climate and Nature Bill having its second reading. We know that an announcement for airport expansion was paused until after the second reading. So that's actually a sign that we are having a big impact, and that the fact that there was concern around the bill and it wasn't just left to pass through actually is a sign that we are doing our job and we are hitting hard, which is a really important thing. Just to note on this, I know it's a bit of a segue, but I know that we're saying that the government isn't doing enough, but we also do have a lot of support amongst Labour MPs, cross-party MPs, peers within the government as well. We still have an offer from Ed Miliband for a meeting. Labour have come out in support of the spirit and substance of the bill, and we heard after the bill's second reading, Steve Reed, the Environment Minister, say that he'd wished the bill had succeeded. So all of this is incredibly important to remind Steve Reed and others that actually this is a shared vision that we can all push forward, and we do really need to let them know that voters care about this and not to be spooked by what's happening with the rise of the far right, and that actually the majority of us do want to see this urgent action. I know we've got 2 minutes, Jamie. I'm not sure if you want to pass over on someone else just to give a brief additional thought.
Have we got time for one last question, or are we out of time, do you think?
If it's a super quick one that can be answered in 30 seconds.
Oh, this one might be a bit bigger than that. I thought it was a good one. But what we will do is continue the discussion after 8 if anyone wants to stay on. I think that's right, Amy, isn't it? So maybe this is a good point for me to hand back to you, and we'll wrap up the Q&A there for now.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Jamie. Well, yes, we are pretty much on the hour, and thank you again all for coming. It's brilliant to see so many of you here and to stay on the call for a full hour. I know it's getting late in the day. We'll all want to be having dinner, going for last minute walks, getting the last of the fresh air and sunlight. George, Domi, huge thanks for all of your support as ever. We definitely couldn't do this without you, and you're always so inspiring to listen to and to hear from. So massive thanks to you, and to Jamie. What a brilliant outline of the campaign. The event is now officially over.